Mayor and members of council, this is yet another neighborhood navigational dredging project, an SSD project. If you recall, we've been in the habit before we go to formal petitions with these neighborhoods, after we've worked with them for a while, we come back and brief you on the project before we issue that formal paperwork. And that's what we're doing today, to describe this project to you and let you know that we're at that phase of issuing petitions. You've seen these slides before, but just quickly to remind everyone, the SSD program has been adopted through your council policy. These are for specific neighborhoods or specific areas of water with the properties bounded around them. The program includes city participation in the funding of the spur channel, we call it, which gets the navigation from the large city channels to the mouth of the neighborhood. But fundamental in this is those that receive the benefit are paying for the dredging through the SSD program, through a surcharge in their real estate tax. The projects that are adopted by council, city management takes over the projects in terms of providing design, permitting, construction management. This was all developed with a lot of input from Dave Hansen. It helps us find a way to create a viable solution for these neighborhoods that haven't been able to bring it off themselves. And we're set up a pretty reasonable time frame, and so far we're sticking pretty close to it. It's set up as a 16-year program with 3 dredging cycles. Just want to remind you of that. If a district is adopted, we're off and running in a 2-year drill to get the first permit and get the plans and specs out the door for the first dredging. And then the second dredging would follow in year 9 and the final dredging in year 16. The projects bring 3 sources of funding, as I said. The neighborhoods collectively, through a surcharge in their real estate tax, and these are just the waterfront property owners being served, pay for the neighborhood channel, the green network that you're going to see on the map. The city cost shares in the spur, and then there's a series of individual elections they can choose to have access basins dredged from the neighborhood channel to their dock. It's not mandatory, but it's a component of the program. We're going to talk a little bit about that financing here in a minute. Again, city management of the project. We are seeing some economies of scale. With some of the work we've put out, a new contractor has come into town. He just won the bid on Bayville Creek and gave us a fairly good price, and he did a wonderful job for us at Crab Creek. So we're happy to have another player in the market, and hopefully that will help get some competition going. Again, most of these projects will be mechanical dredging in the Lynn Haven. In the Rudy Inlet Basin, we're fortunate to have a disposal area, and we can do those with a hydraulic dredge, but these will all be backhoes on barges. Within Dix Creek, we have a willing property owner, and there may be an opportunity to build a transfer station within the neighborhood and transfer the material from barge to truck there. If that doesn't pan out for a number of reasons, environmental considerations and so forth, the alternative would be to use what we had formerly called the Crab Creek Dredge Material Transfer Facility. We have not yet gotten that permitted, but there is a new wharf that's been built with the Lesner Bridge project, and that's exactly the same footprint that we had proposed to permanent dredge material transfer facility. So we're still holding out hope that that will become an option. And then finally, all the material will go to the Whitehurst Dredge Material Management Area, a former borrow pit off Oceana that we've purchased and have permitted for the placement of dredge material. So far, 28 neighborhoods have approached us.
Sorry about that. This is a technology impairment. My apologies.
So 28 neighborhoods have approached us to do analysis on their neighborhoods.
You need to leave the room.
We're going to send you for a course next week. Is IT available here, Colonel? What's going on?
Two young guys over there, I'm sure can fix it.
My apologies. One of my former students over there looking at the prop. This is bad.
You can go in it.
So to date, council has adopted 7 of these navigational projects, the ones shown in green and black. The 2 in black are actually under construction. Little Neck Creek has received their petitions. They have not yet reached 80%, but they have not yet thrown in the towel. So they're still trying to see if they can't win over a vote or two. And then we're talking tonight about Dix Creek. The 4 other projects up there in red, 3 of them were formally petitioned and failed to pass the 80% threshold, and 1 of them just elected not to go forward. Here they are on the map. They're kind of spread out. As I mentioned, we do have a couple of projects in the Rudy Inlet Basin. The one we're talking about tonight is at the tip of Little Neck. It's got the red cloud around it, Dix Creek. Here's what it looks like. There are 145 potential participants in this district. The green channel, I hope you can tell the difference between red or blue and green, but the spur channel is this portion here that would be funded by the city. And all the rest of the channel you see on there would be funded by those 145 property owners through the surcharge on their real estate tax. I'm going to run you quickly through the numbers, but please feel free to ask questions. We priced these out for the full 16 years and set the initial rate based on today with a forecast in the 16 years. Fundamental in this and in your policy is we review every 4 years the actual costs and the actual assessments and reset the rate, so that at the end of 16 years, we've collected back just exactly the cost, no more, no less. But our portion, what we're estimating to be the city portion of that spur channel for the 16-year period, turns out to be about $709,000. The big money is in that 3.8 miles of neighborhood channel, the green channel, through the 3 dredging cycles in the 16 years. It's our estimate right now is $9.7 million. One way to look at this is the $700,000 of city investment in this neighborhood channel system is really in some ways leveraging a much larger amount from the property owners to create that improvement, to help with property values and quality of life. We throw this slide in there. This is the individual access basins, and this is if every one of those property owners built an access basin with some assumed yardage of 250 cubic yards each, just to get an idea of how much money, in addition to the SSD channel, might be expended by the citizens to improve this waterway. But for the first cycle of dredging, about $1.5 million of access basin dredging. Now this is what it looks like in an appropriation schedule. So in year 1, upon adoption, if it's adopted, we would ask for design money so we can get off running with that. And then in year 2, we'd need construction money for that first cycle of dredging. So inherent in those 2 numbers, design and construction in years 1 and 2, is the city spur channel, design and construction, the SSD channel, design and construction, and the individual access basins. So there's really 3 flavors of money. There's general fund money. There's also general fund money that is going to be paid back through the SSD tax surcharge. And then there's future revenues, not actual appropriations, for the individual access basins. So we appropriate those amounts so that we can advertise the construction contract, but we will only award for construction the amount of money received from the willing and property owners who have voluntarily contributed and want to participate in that. Does that make sense? So here's the money shot, the data. It's a big district at 145 properties. We're actually using the FY16 property assessments that aren't out yet, but since this is on one of those cusp periods, when they're done with their petition drive, we're going to be in FY16, so we're using that data. But with $120 million of properties, each penny raises $12,000, and the real, we're kind of changing our brief to the community. That people get hung up on the rate, and 50 cents, 50.2 cents is a big rate. But what you really need to be concerned with is the 9.7. That's our current cost estimate. It's subject to change, future conditions, but the neighborhood, the 145 properties collectively over 16 years need to pay back $9.7 million. So if their assessments go through the roof, the rate can drop. We're only trying to recoup the 9.6 million or 9.7 million. So So a lot of sensitivity to the rates. One neighborhood at 38 cents is happy fine. The next neighborhood at 41 cents is outraged and it's too much money. It comes down to, if you're a property owner of $1 million property in this neighborhood, it's $5,000 a year for 16 years. Is that something you're willing? Because the rate can change, but when you do the math, it's still going to end up being around $5,000 a year. So that's really the fundamental question that property owners need to ask themselves when they're faced with the willingness petition. And again, I just want to reemphasize that every 4 years, we're going to take a step back and come back to you for a rate change. We'll have the then assessed numbers, we'll have the then real actual costs, and we'll be able to refine the number as we move into the future. So we've already done a lot of these steps. We've been working with this neighborhood quite a bit, about a year and a half. We've met with them twice formally and invited all the participants to come to public information meetings. Our last one was May 14th. They feel they're ready to be petitioned, and they're asking us to go ahead and submit to them the final paperwork. And that's really why we're here today, is to make sure you're aware of that and to make sure you do or don't have any concerns about that. And I think that's...
Okay, any questions or comments? Just
Did you show us on the map where that was?
Where Dix Creek was, or?
Dix Creek, yeah.
Yeah, it's this clouded, it's right here at the tip of Little Neck. It's Sea Breeze Farms and Sea Breeze Point.
I wonder what neighborhoods it was.
Yes.
Does anyone object to moving forward? Very good. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
Okay, city council liaison reports. Hearing done?
1 minute.
Oh, excuse me.
Two tiny ones from, that I attended as liaison from them, the Human Services. They had a very nice foster care providers appreciation banquet. It was well attended. And then we're pleased about the $3,000 award for the library board. Wish the God to help that slide back.
That's
Those are
great.
the two.
Great. I've had the pleasure of last night of being at the MILA, which is the Mayor's Youth Leadership Association. And I know none of us can never be surprised by the wonderful things young people are doing. And I saw that firsthand. It was their annual awards meeting. But one of the young ladies that received a number of awards, she's got $140,000 in scholarships. And I said, of course, that's over the 4-year period. I said, whoa, wow.
Wow.
And I love my children so much, but where did we go?
Got right around ticket anyway.
Isn't that great, though? All right, city council comments.
What does she want to study? What does she want to study?
I don't know. I just got heard 140,000.
Anyone else ask?
That blew his mind right there.
It did. John?
Well, I have a few. I know we have our bond sale on today, so I took the bond prospectus that we did back in, with the public water utility bonds back in April of 14, or 15 of November 15th. And I went back and compared it with the latest bond prospectus because there's a lot of financial data, household incomes. And I thought I just would share a few high points because I think it shows why we don't sometimes take the time to understand what's happening with the data that we do have. But for example, in the services, this talks about all the number of people employed. We had, back in March 31st, the average weekly wage for these 80,000 people roughly who worked in services was $759 a week. For the 86,000, as of 30 September, 6 months later, it's down to $700 a week. When you looked at across the whole scheme of things, the average weekly wage went from $750 to $726 for all people in the private sector. So it's a decline over that 6 period, about 8%, about 3%. Now, when you look at the public sector, the state and local went up, the federal went down, but the overall public sector wage went up. And the total actually went down, went from, it was $769 for the city as a whole to $751. Now, when you go and look at employment by sector, the area that had the biggest decline, 8.8% decline in average weekly wage, went from 47.7% of our economy to 49.5. So I just think these are some of the metrics I talked about before about looking for the stem and tracking, because while we talk about all this stuff, how is it actually influencing the data that's collected? And are we really making the progress we think we are? And so that gets back to the falling retail sales we mentioned last week. Well, if you go into the bond prospectus and if you look at taxable retail sales from 2004 to 2014, and you discount that with the CPI inflator for inflation, we actually are generating $400 million less retail sales, taxable retail sales, than we would have had taxable sales grown with inflation over that 10-year period. I think that's, and understanding why that's the case, I think that's important. And then later on in the back, and this will be the last one I make because I think this is worthy, there was a discussion about a number of revenue sources. Retail, and once again, controlling for inflation. What's the real change? Well, real estate was up $626,000. But personal property tax was down 4.4% from what you would have expected. General sales tax down 5.6% over that period. Utility taxes, you can't really use that because that's a constant dollar value, so I discounted that. Restaurants was a plus area, up 12% in real terms. Might explain the other down. Other taxes were down 3.7%. And overall, the difference when you looked at all the revenue is about 2.23%. Now, why that's important is because when you go back and look at median family income controlled for inflation, it's down 11%. It's down 11%. My point has always been that the city, though we've been controlling costs best we think, we have been growing taxes and fees on people whose real income is declining significantly more than the purchasing power of the city itself. So the city is becoming an increasing burden on households. And I think you hear it in the water rates, you hear about a lot of things. We have got to either change this part of the equation on the income side, or we've got to get a handle on the expense side. But these are not good numbers. These are not good numbers.
Any other comments? John and then Bobby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you all know, we had the Warrior Week this past weekend in conjunction with the Patriotic Festival. And I met with the USO yesterday morning, and we hosted over 500 wounded warriors and their families this weekend. And if it would be all right with the council, I'd like to invite the USO just to do a brief summary of the different events that they did and the attendance like we did last year. It wouldn't take much time at all, but I think it would be of interest.
I think it'd be worthwhile, and it was quite an experience.
Thank you.
Bobby?
Yeah, thank you very much. Pursuant to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago about promoting civility, you know, in city council chambers and everything, I believe we should go forward. And I think out of a courtesy, we waited for the mayor and the city manager to get back into town. And then hopefully we can get with Mark and perhaps the police chief and come up with some ideas of what we might do. You know, I think it's pretty obviously, it's obvious that it's been in the paper. There was even an article today by Roger Chesley about some other cities. I think this is a topic, based on just some of the comments I've received from the public, you know, this might be an initiative that is, you know, we can be, you know, the tip of the spear on and really be a driving force on this. And I think a lot of people in the public would really like to see something done proactively. So, you know, we will be moving forward.
Thank you very much. Other comments? Very good. Let's go with the agenda. I got a vision.
Beat the storm.
Yeah, beat the storm.
All right. First under ordinances and resolutions. Anybody have any comments on those?
No, I do serve on this deferred compensation investment policy, and that looks all good.
I remember that.
So are you saying,
It's good. I just want to let you know, I just wasn't this, so I support it.
all right, so that's it on resolutions and ordinances, right? Under planning, Jeffrey A. and Suzanne Bright, Beach District, Mr. Earn.
Heard no issues with that question.
Okay, item 2, Thomas R. and Joan G. Eckert. I think we worked everything out on that.
And congratulations.
Great work there, Louis.
Okay, you'll be abstaining.
Yes, please.
Ordinance to amend sections of the floodplain ordinance, recreational resort communities. Everybody okay? Four ordinances to grant extensions for satisfying conditions of street closures. Kempsville District,
I'm fine with that, Vice Mayor.
that's it, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, we got a busy closed session. Excuse me? Yes, sorry to say that Jeff McMoore's mother-in-law passed away. And so he will not be here to get his resolution. We will get that to him. We'll have him another time.
All right.
The chair will entertain a motion to recess into a closed session pursuant to the exemptions from open meetings allowed by section 2.2-3711A Code of Virginia as amended for the following purposes. Public contract discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditures of public funds and discussions of the terms or scope of such contract, where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to section 2.2-3711A29 Arena. Publicly held property discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for public purpose or the disposition of publicly held property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to section 2.2-3711A3, Princess Anne, Beach District, Beach District, Beach District. Personnel matters, discussion, consideration of, or interviews for prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees pursuant to section 2.2-3711A1, council appointments, councils, boards, commissions, committees, authorities, agencies, and appointees. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Davenport,
Aye.
Mr. Dyer,
Aye.
Mrs. Henley,
Aye.
Mrs. Kane,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Dr. O'Hanlon, Aye. Mr. Burns, Mrs. Wilson,
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Mayor Calloway,
All right.
Mr. Rhodes,
Aye. Aye.